All righty, I've got 3:30. We'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. This is a workshop for Dewberry Engineers Incorporated to present the wastewater feasibility analysis. David, are you kicking it off?
I'll kick it off. Wakulla County has been identified by FDEP as a stakeholder in the Florida Springs Aquifer Protection Act. As a stakeholder, FDEP has determined that upgrade or elimination of septic systems is necessary to achieve nutrient water quality levels objectives. The development of a master wastewater treatment feasibility analysis to establish specific strategies for implementing actions to lessen nutrient impact of septic systems is vital to preserve our water quality. On January 7, 2019, the board approved a grant to move forward with a master wastewater treatment facility. It was extended one time. Dewberry, Trevor is here to present the findings of this report. Just so that I'll briefly run down here with the task levels that were asked to develop an inventory of existing septic systems and wastewater infrastructure. Number 2, document the wastewater infrastructure needed to meet the remediation requirements of the BMAP. Task 3 was to identify septic systems within priority focus area and BMAP areas that require remediation. Number 4 is create a cost comparison of alternative strategies to achieve remediation. Number 5, project service area, which is set up a GIS shapefile for all the service areas and census tracts. Plan and execute stakeholder meetings, meet with the public, have public announcements, etc. Final report and findings speaks for itself. So without further ado, Trevor Birch from Dewberry, he was the author of this report. Trevor.
Good afternoon, Commission. So I've got this presentation, and feel free to stop me as we're going through if there's a question, or if you want me to just get to the end and rattle off some questions then, however you'd like to, but I'm prepared to make this as formal or informal as y'all would like to handle it moving forward. But just to start off again, my name's Trevor Birch. I'm a professional engineer with Dewberry. We worked over the past 2 years getting this report together for you. And I just want to start off with some of the basics, just talking about the BMAP. One thing that I found was surprising was on some of the surveys that we sent out to the community. I think we take for granted because we talk about the BMAP and the PFAs like it's any other 3-letter acronym that we're very used to, but a lot of the public that responded said that they were not familiar with the BMAP and what the PFA is. So we'll start out with that, work our way into what the report is, and then work our way through the components of the report. So at first glance, the BMAP, it's interchangeable in the lingo that we're using. It's both a document and a particular geographic area. The document was created by the Florida Department of Environmental Protection, and as you see on the screen, it was basically a blueprint to help restore impaired waters, reduce pollutant loads, and inform the decision-making process and identify funding. It is also this area that's outlined on the screen in the black dotted line going up through Leon County all the way to the Georgia line and then down, shaving down a triangular portion of Wakulla County. Inside of the BMAP, there are 2 PFAs, which stand for priority focus areas. Those are the areas that have the highest aquifer vulnerability per the study that they did. And in those, most of what we have here in Wakulla County, especially in this Crawfordville area, we're all in PFA 2 right down here, but there is PFA 1 just to the north of us and up to the Leon County line. The reason that this is important, and I feel like these pictures kind of speak for themselves. This is a picture of 1967 Wakulla Spring, 2018 Wakulla Spring. So we understand that there's an issue, right, that the state has determined that was nitrogen-based and needed to do something to remediate that. In the report, in the BMAP itself, they determined that the primary cause of the nitrogen was due to septic systems. Actually, 34% of the loading of nitrogen that's getting to Wakulla Spring is coming from septic systems themselves. So they tasked us, or they tasked you with getting a feasibility analysis to determine how remediation can move forward to be able to fix those issues.
Spray field active when they did that pie chart?
it was whenever they wrote the B map. I think that was 2018.
They had already changed, okay.
You're talking about the one in Leon County, correct?
They'd already upgraded to AWT standards and stopped fertilizing it and all that other good stuff, right? Chuck? Right.
Okay. So an overview of the feasibility study itself. The funding came from DEP, went through the county, it was procured, Dewberry was selected for the project, and then we provide the deliverables back up to both the county and the state for use through however you determine and the state determines to decipher the information. A lot of mapping, a lot of reports to help assist with future projects. Again, the understanding is that it would improve water quality, assists with the improvement of water quality, and protection of the springs and the surrounding community. The infographic there, although it's still small on the screen, just gives you an idea of how big of a deal it is with Wakulla Spring. It's the largest and deepest freshwater spring in the world, and discharges about 250 million gallons of water a day, which is a pretty substantial amount of water. The feasibility study itself looked at a planning period of 20 years of what would need to be done, focused specifically on the BMAP area within Wakulla County. Leon County has a report that they're doing for the BMAP there. This was just focusing on what was involved in Wakulla County's portion of that area. We needed to evaluate different existing septic systems, wastewater treatment systems, and gauge community interest in future sewering projects. That's the surveys that we sent out. We also need to propose different projects and options to be able to achieve the compliance with the BMAP, and then provide deliverables back to you to help you make good determinations on what you need to do to move forward. So without further ado, the information that we first started with was GIS mapping, and I know that the commission is very familiar with GIS mapping. You've got a great asset here in Brandon Geiger with being able to, he started a pretty robust GIS program. What we're doing is being able to fill in some gaps as far as your sewer system is concerned with that information that he's already got. So this is a list of the maps. The following slides are actually the maps themselves, and I'll talk a little bit more about them as we go through, but just to list off the ones that we've got is the existing septic and sewer areas, the location, age, and type of wastewater system, smoke testing results, which I'll talk a little bit more about what that involves, anticipated growth patterns, proposed system improvements, OSCDS within the BMAP, and that's on-site treatment and disposal systems, just another word for septic systems that's used within the BMAP document itself, and then service areas and census tracts. So the first map that we have is the existing septic and sewer systems. You'll see that those are broken into known and likely septic, known and likely sewer, and then available sewer. Available being in the areas where we've already done sewering projects or subdivisions that have existing sewer that if a lot were to develop, it could tie directly to a sewer system. So primarily for the case of this, those are in the Magnolia and Wakulla Gardens areas. Yes, sir.
So why do you mark all these areas as likely septic? Since we know we don't have a system out there.
There were some areas, most of these, if you'll see on the map, most of these were marked as known septic or known sewer. There were a few that we weren't able to verify, and it was areas where there was a potential that it could have been a grinder station, maybe tied into the system, and there's just not built. We searched billing data, we did home interviews, we visually inspect to see if we could find any sort of infrastructure in the area. So there's very few that are likely, but we.
That's half the county, it looks like, is in the likely area.
Yeah, but I'm going, if...
That's the orange is the known, the orange, I'm sorry, is the likely septic. The red is the known septic, and the green is the known sewer.
I'm blind, by the way, so.
That's all right.
No sense.
I can mark them with a dot if we need to help out, but yeah, some of those are larger parcels. Justin actually helped develop the GIS standards. Justin Ford with Dewberry.
So what some of that is many of these we had either permits that told us, yes, there is a septic system here. In a lot of the cases, we may not have had a permit or a record from the health department or DEP, whoever it may have been, a permit that showed there was a septic system on that site. we're pretty confident there is one. That's why it's likely. You know, there's a home there, there's more than likely a septic system there, but
The home there, and you don't have a lined
sure.
system,
The only reason...
that'd be on a septic tank.
Right, and I see your point. Logically,
Could call it most likely then, how about that?
right.
I've seen 55-gallon drums.
Well, that's still a septic system. It's not a good one, but it's still a system. It's not,
What it boiled down to is we didn't have concrete data that said, yes, there's a septic system here.
so basically, if it says yellow or orange, it's basically a septic.
You're pretty much. And that, now I will say too, and you'll see some large blocks there, if it was a home on a 50-acre tract, the whole tract got designated that color. So,
That's, I understand. It's just, I'm just trying to go, why is it so orange?
Maybe you should call it 99% sure it's septic, and Chuck be happy. But I'm sure there's probably some old systems that are just inferior systems. I've seen them with a dirt floor, that it's got, cinder block walls and it's got a top on it.
That's still a septic system. It's not a sewer system. Right. And that's, the difference here is between septic and sewer.
Yeah, but you might as well just be pumping it straight in the ground.
Well, I agree with you there, but it's just what you're calling it, that needs to be known septic system of some type or another.
Yeah.
Well, this was based on our best available data, and we did do field evaluations, we did check billing records, we did check permits.
Assumed septic. How about that, Chuck?
That would make sense.
There you go.
Okay, well, we can,
Compromise reached.
Justin, can you make a note of that? All right, thank you. We can change that to assumed, we'll do the same for sewer as well, assumed sewer and assumed septic.
Is there any yellow on there? I can't.
I think say, show me the yellow because I can't see
The orange. I don't see any. See the big rectangle on the left side? That's orange. I see yellow.
but I don't see no yellow.
Yeah, I'm looking for likely sewer.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Wakulla Springs at the head of the river, isn't that yellow?
We got the point, let's cut on.
Okay. We can roll back to this one if there's time, and we can dive into this one. We've got a computer, we can pull up this map and dive into specific parcels if you're interested. The next map that we've got is the gravity sewer and manholes. Although the county had a lot of as-built data, there was nothing that really brought all of your sewer information together in one map. So what we did was we collected AutoCAD drawings, PDFs, some hand-drawn as-built, and did some surveying work as well to be able to bring all this in. I know it just, with being this far zoomed out, it's a lot of dots on the map, so please forgive this for the point of the presentation. The value is in the file, the GIS file itself. You can actually scroll in, you can click on a particular manhole. The recorded elevations for that manhole are in the GIS program, and this really helps if there's say a potential developer looking at a tract of land and they want to connect into the county sewer system. It lets them know if they'll be able to provide gravity to tie directly in. If you're doing a septic to sewer project adjacent to something that's already existing, it helps in that whole process, speed it up. The caveat being that that information should still be verified. This is coming from old as-built drawings, old hand drawings, so we're taking that information and putting that in here. But most people, when they're doing the design, they're going to go through and get that surveyed to verify.
We're assuming that all those gravities are 8-inch lines.
Well, we've also got that information as well. Whatever was written in the as-built, there's some that was 10-inch, most was 8-inch. I think there may have been one or two old sections with some 6-inch, but it's actually, you can click on the pipe itself and it'll tell you if it was PVC or ductile iron or clay, what the material was when we had the known material. So that, again, that assists also with your maintenance and upkeep of the system. You know what you're going to be going out there and getting into, or you know if somebody is wanting to do a tie-in, if there's a section of clay but there's PVC adjacent to it, you're much rather going to connect to the PVC than the clay.
Yeah, you didn't include Shell Point or
No, those
or outside the...
So we could not, we attempted to get some information from Shell Point. Talcon was unable to provide that information, and we recently acquired some information in the river sink area, so that we have those PDFs, but this is the county's system itself.
This is public only.
This is public, these are the public system, yes. Yes. And that's the data that we're providing back in the GIS file. The next map is lift station age and location. So each one of the dots is color-coded to determine what the age is on the infrastructure. The valuable thing with GIS is you can create additional what's called attributes. And so if you wanted to add, add maintenance records or add specific pump information or anything like that, you could add that, and then staff could go in and click on that, and they could see the last time that a lift station had been maintained. It's a very useful feature to have all this in GIS. The next map, smoke testing defects. So if you're not familiar with smoke testing, basically it's just what it says. You blow smoke into a gravity sewer system. The smoke comes out of the ground where there's a hole in the system, and you can quickly identify where you need to go do a point repair. So we found each one of the orange dots on the screen. We tested some areas in the Crawfordville area, tested Panacea and also in Sopchoppy, and found quite a few. Most of them were some cleanouts or some laterals that had a cap missing or a small break, many of which have already been fixed. But this helps you prevent unwanted inflow into the system from stormwater, which assists with your pumping rates. And then also, while we were out doing the smoke testing, we were able to verify the location of the utilities for the previous map I showed with the manhole locations and pipe locations, and we actually found some things that weren't shown on as-builts and were able to be updated through that process. The next map we've got is anticipated growth patterns. You'll see that that's labeled by available sewer. The sewer is not anticipated, or the sewer is planned. The available sewer is that whenever anything ties on, there's immediately sewer available for that. The plan shows that anything that has come across, we discussed with planning and zoning, any future development that has planned sewer, and then the red of not anticipated, either the density doesn't meet the BMAP or county requirements for septic. That's really the main reason, or that there's not sewer directly available. You'll see some on the far east side of the county that's not near your system at all.
So why are there some parcels with no color?
These are just the growth areas. These are just the areas where we anticipate build out of potentially a large parcel.
I got you.
So those are the only parcels identified on this map. Is that correct, Justin?
This is from feedback from the planning department. These parcels have been identified for potential developments, and so we took the best available information and evaluated whether the parcel would have sewer, be have sewer, or may not.
Trevor, what's the purple line again?
The purple line, that's a reuse line that the county has. The green line is your is proposed sewer force main. So you can kind of see where those intersect. There's a couple of areas, again in red, down on the southeast corner of where all of that's at, sort of towards, it looks like the Spring Creek area, just below I see the Park subdivision right there, just south of it, and the density is just very low that's proposed. One of those parcels actually is the parcel that's adjacent to the Lift Station 76 property, and it's shown as not anticipated. It was previously looked at as potential development. Someone bought the property and is not anticipated development of that parcel. So anyways, there's currently only one home on that large tract.
So where does that reuse line go? That's not the one for the golf course, is it?
That's the one this is proposed infrastructure. That's the one that's proposed to be reused. It's a current sewer force main, and it would go all the way out to the Lift Station 76. That's all of that infrastructure would be replaced with a brand new force main. So instead of just abandoning it in place or removing it from the ground, there's utility in converting it into reuse. You could eventually serve homes or send water to whatever reuse capacity that you would like to do in the future.
The one that goes to the golf course. The other is just laid right on top of it. That's why you
Okay.
It was gonna go to Jerry Moore's property, but we've nixed that.
That reuse main will still be active to that direction. So if you chose to serve properties with reuse or whatever, there's not currently a plan to, David, correct me if I'm wrong here, it's not currently a plan to use that property for reuse. It's just, there's no sense in abandoning the infrastructure. It's already there. You could, many places use these lines to be able to serve, again, homes for irrigation or whatever else.
That could take, if we ever wanted to put irrigation on the right of way, all up and down.
Owen Bellamy could want it.
98 Owen Bellamy. We just leave it there. We need it, we got it. If not,
Yeah,
we don't use it.
it's there, ready for you to use at a very minimal cost.
It's not a new line, it's the reuse of the existing line.
Reuse of the existing line, that's correct. Reuse.
Reuse for your reuse.
That's right.
Of a reuse line.
This map has the proposed improvements. If you don't mind, I'm going to skip over this one for just a minute because we actually will talk about this one more in depth in a further section of this presentation, but suffice it to say, it has information about all the proposed improvements that need to be done in the county to be able to facilitate both future growth through development and future growth of the system through septic and sewer projects. This is a clipped-down version of the map we had previously discussed, showing the septic, the sewer, and we'll change the language on this map as well to assumed septic, assumed sewer, and also clips it within the BMAP boundary. You see that some of the parcels extend past the BMAP boundary. If any part of the parcel was inside the BMAP, there wasn't really a good way to break it up because that is the whole parcel. So for the purposes of this map, if any part of the parcel was in the BMAP boundary, the whole parcel was highlighted and included in this map. And then this is part of the deliverable that DEP asked. They wanted to see the census tracts across the county in GIS and also see sewer basins. The yellow lines outline different areas where we would anticipate if there were growth in those areas, they would all feed back to a central lift station to reduce the number of total lift stations that pump directly to the wastewater plant. So you'll see there's one in the Sop-Choppy area, there's one in central Crawfordville, one just north of Crawfordville. Some of it's based on the way that your system is currently designed, and some of it's based off of what we anticipate with growth in the future. So just a general idea of how we would collect sewer over the next several years. The next part of the report that we provided was hydraulic modeling. What that does is it allows you to put information about your pumps and information about your pipes and system information into a computer software, and then you can run that as if you were running your live system. You'll be able to pull out pressures and flows, and you can determine if a certain pump would work in a certain situation. It's been very beneficial doing the septic upgrade projects, as well as when developers call in and say, hey, we need to know a time pressure to connect to your sewer system. It allows them to facilitate that pressure in their design so it doesn't conflict with anything that you've currently got existing in your system.
Your system curve on all the major force mains.
And it'll spit that out. You can get system curves back out. You throw pump curves in, you can get system curves out, and it's dynamic. So you can look at what your system curve would be with 2 pumps running at this station, or these stations competing against each other. It shows you when you're going to have potential overload or deadhead on pumps. It's very quick, and it's much easier than doing it all by hand, especially when you're looking at a lot of
Problem
calculations.
we've had is everybody that comes online puts a bigger and bigger pump on it, we have the head pressure, and then pretty soon they're overpowering the guys that are there.
Absolutely, and that's the issue that we've run into. That's some of the proposed upgrades that I'll talk about.
Some of those upgrades take care of
It helped us to identify those issues. And in a way that we did to calibrate this, we did a lot of field work. We actually went to all of the major pump stations in the county. We left alone most of the grinder stations. It'd be very difficult to do what's called a drawdown test, and essentially turn the pumps on, you measure the amount of flow that's pumped out, and then you can calibrate the model to make sure that it's replicating the real life scenario. And so we've done that. So the model is very accurate, provides good information, and we've actually done several designs. We've been working on this for quite some time. We've done designs off of it, put pumps in the field, and they come to very close to what the model conditions are. So we have a
Pipes old enough to require different friction coefficient on them?
Well, and that's one of the things you do through the pump down with the drawdown test is you can evaluate that. Another thing that you can find, we didn't find it here, but we found it in other places, is sometimes there'll be a random valve closed, and you run the pump and you can't figure out why it's not acting like what it should in the model, and you go out and start turning valves and you realize that one was throttled for some reason, or I guess somebody got in a hurry, didn't wait to open it up all the way, or it kind of got stuck. So you can find some really valuable information with operation and maintenance just by doing the modeling and the drawdown tests. So anyways, we've got that tool that's at your disposal now. We'll be providing the digital files for the county's use with the submission of this report. Another item that we had was the sewer standards. Originally in the list of deliverables that David read out, there's one for an asset management plan. As we began to work on this report, we determined that there was actually a pretty decent asset management program that ESG currently had. And so instead of just getting information spit out and providing it back to you in a report form, we discussed with David what would be a beneficial add to the county. And as it was discussed, the sewer standards book was very important. And what that is, it's a book of details and drawings that allow you to standardize what's going on in your sewer system. So whether that's projects like septic to sewer projects, or if that's new development coming online that, as you know, developers will build a system, they build it to the county's standards, which have not necessarily been in stone up to this point, and that allows them to design to that point so that then when you take over that system, you're able to have standard equipment. So there's not 14 models of this and 3 different sizes of this other thing. You're able to have redundancy, if you will, in your system, and it assists with operation and maintenance. And even with pumps, it's helped out in some of the ones that we have begun to standardize. If one pump goes out, you're able to borrow a pump from another lift station, and you don't have a lack of service. You're able to continue to provide high-quality service to the citizens. And this book will assist you in doing that.
Now, we had them set in stone.
You have them set in stone.
My past life, I used to run Public Works. I remember the board adopted it.
Mm-hmm.
We had deflator EMU pumps, and we had detailed drawings. In fact, that Pueblo Ridge drew for us,
Mm-hmm.
and a whole book of standards. I'm assuming that's been followed over the years.
I may have misspoke. I know that I'll say this: the standards were old and have been changed through
Like
time.
EMU is still in business, or
They are both still in business.
Also, somewhere down the line, the board advised that they wanted to open it up for other pumps.
I remember
Mhm.
Pump X came.
And next thing you know, we're trying to change out different pumps all over the world, so we're back to standardizing pumps.
Yeah, there's a deviation. A better representation of what happened was there was a deviation from the original standards and re-standardized, I guess, would be the.
Yeah, we're trying to
best.
re-standardize that. A lot of old details are old, and there's new technology now.
Mhm.
So
I mean, it was in the 2000s when we got it from Pueblo Ridge.
still,
Certainly.
yeah.
Yeah. There have been a few things that have changed since then. Yeah. Well, you've got a new book.
What you guys settle on? Have you settled on brand?
Primarily, KSB has been the pump that's been used on the larger lift stations in the county, and Shimewa is another brand. They've been used on the coastal lift stations. They're a less expensive pump, but have a really good warranty. I know that Ned's had a lot of good luck with using them.
Like I said before, 15, 20 years ago, it don't matter what pump it is, but if you have the same pump, you can at least interchange
And
parts.
that's been the value on some of these more recent projects. There's been enough of the KSB pumps in the system where if one lift station has just been things happen, both pumps didn't work. There's redundant pumps. There's several pump stations you have that utilize the same pump or a very, very, very similar pump. And similar, you understand, like guide rail brackets and the mounting system. So you were able to pull out of one, take it, the other panel will run it, drop it in, and let it run. So it's
Subdivisions, they all follow these standards, the KSB pumps. And they all have phase monitors on them still, and we used to have them big. auto dollars they had to put for failures, and that's done anymore, but.
Yeah, one of the big things is we're changing up is instead of going with a generator backup, we're going with a pump backup, diesel pump.
Well, we added on that you had to have at least a place to hook a bypass pump to, because they
We're
used
going
to
to
have
go with the
those.
bypass pump instead of the generator
So
now.
you're making them put a pump in.
On certain, on lift stations that meet a certain qualification, they're required to do that.
Generator is going to get an actual pump.
They're required to have like if it's a portable bypass pump, if that's all that's required there, they're required to have the cam lock fitting so that it's a quick and easy connect, and then also have a redundant, connection point for a generator if for some reason you just put a generator on it. All right. Next is the summary of the community surveys. So I know we've discussed this, it skipped several, I apologize. The community surveys, they're posted on the county's website and Facebook page. WFSU actually called me and did a interview, and I know they posted something on their website about these, as well as ran a radio ad for, I'm not exactly sure how long, but I know it was, I'd actually had somebody call me from Tallahassee, said they heard about it on the radio. So anyways, well publicized. We were gauging, the purpose of this was DEP wanted us to gauge public opinion of sewering projects. And through that, we took liberty to find out some more information about the public's concerns about the environmental health of the springs, environmental issues within the county, experience with past sewer projects, general knowledge of the BMAP, the PFAs, sewer projects, and also try to find out how people are getting their information, which I thought was interesting because of all the people that responded, per survey, I think there's a little over 300 respondents, and only a third answered positive to whether they got a local newspaper, whether they checked the Facebook site, whether they checked the county's page, or attended public meetings. Is only about a third responded positively to any singular question of that. And so anyways, there's potential that we need to look at a way to let people know. I don't, other than that, I don't know how to reach people. I mean, you've pretty much well represented it through newspaper, Facebook, website, public outreach campaigns, but potentially just to spur interest, let people know that the county's Facebook page does publish this sort of information, that's the direction that y'all are going. Anyways, I thought it was good information to know.
Our Facebook page, everybody know about it.
There you go.
Because I have so many friends.
That'll work. Whatever's chosen, I just wanted to point that out as just something that I found interesting, as just a sidebar on the surveys that did come back, was that it seemed very, everybody seemed to kind of know what was going on. Actually, most of the respondents said they had heard about the sewer projects, but again, less than a third from any particular source. So that was interesting. I'm not exactly sure how the information's getting out, but maybe something to look at. Of that, though, there was some value to it. The public opinion showing the desire to continue doing sewer projects. Most people that responded did want to continue doing sewering projects, whether that be septic upgrades or providing sewer to their neighborhood. And those that did respond said that they had a positive experience with one of those two grant programs. So to me, that's a good thing. It means that you've been doing a good job rolling these projects out, and also the community is wanting to continue those, so we can continue rolling forward. Next, we've got the flow and capacity, which was a sub-report in the final report. That looked at the flow availability, capacity at the wastewater plants that were within the BMAP or discharged to the BMAP within Wakulla County. Those are four particular plants, the first of which, Winco Utilities on the north end of the county. It services the correctional facility, and there's an Opportunity Park, of which there's only one business currently there that it services. River Plantation Estates, which services just that neighborhood, River Plantation. The Wakulla Middle School, which is a package plant just for the middle school, and then the one you're most familiar with, which is the Otter Creek, or the Wakulla County Wastewater Treatment Plant. The growth, as we looked at this, is only significantly anticipated at the Otter Creek Wastewater Treatment Facility. The Winco facility has potential for some growth if additional businesses build out, but again, their service area is pretty limited to the correctional facility and that Opportunity Park. The middle school, again, just the fluctuation in students is what's going to be able to affect that. And River Plantation, it's pretty locked. They've got a gravity sewer system, and most of the people along the route there on the gravity sewer system have already connected. There's a few that haven't, but anyways, growth of those three systems is not significantly anticipated. Yes, sir.
Well, we've got development going in around the middle school. Would it be more beneficial to move that to that wastewater treatment plant?
That needs to be a,
So
Our line. Abandon it and move it all to.
it needs to be moved to our line.
So that's part of the discussion is that there have been talks, I know in the past and thus far, I believe unsuccessfully, about the acquisition in some capacity of those wastewater plants by the county. What I would anticipate would be that the Wakulla Middle School could be decommissioned, a lift station could be put in, and that's actually an area where we've discussed having a septic to sewer project. So it would actually make a lot of sense to decommission that plant, pump to Otter Creek facility and treat to advanced wastewater treatment, public access reuse standards. The same with River Plantation Estates. There's some areas just across the river there that could also be picked up with septic to sewer, decommission the plant, create a pump station and pump it back to Otter Creek wastewater treatment
Had
facility.
that discussion with the middle school when we resurfaced Wildwood, to tie them on, and they couldn't, at the time, they could not buy it off putting the lift station.
It's just a 10,000 gallon package plant, right?
Yeah.
20,000?
I believe
not very-
it's listed in the report. I'd have to pull that particular piece of information. but-
Small, but
Very small, yeah.
we had them, they were not ready to tackle it, so we said, okay, now's a good time to tie on, but they.
You gotta get an easement to get out to 98.
Yeah, but I thought it was also something to do with the cost of it, but.
Yeah, it was the cost, that's what I'm saying, they didn't have the appetite to.
Yeah, but you had all the new developments going in there, which would have been,
Well, we were gonna go into cost sharing with them and everything, they were just not ready for prime time.
What's the new development point, Chuck?
Shelf is putting 50 houses back there. Yeah. Right there beside, I mean, it's right adjacent.
Yeah, but he
to the
can't,
store.
he couldn't tie into that and use it for sewer, though.
If we put a lift station there, he could tie into that and put and so we wouldn't have those septic tanks that we're gonna pay.
Could be an argument for that, I agree
But
with that.
that problem is we would have to do that through our other programs, because Shuff, I think John has already, that ship has sailed.
Yeah, we should have addressed it when we approved it.
Yeah.
Well, there's other, I know where that development is, but there's other areas in there that are currently on septic that we've discussed. It's actually identified as one of the septic to sewer phases to be able to take those homes off of septic and put them on sewer, which would be adjacent to the Wakulla Middle School.
Yes,
It's a dollars figure, right now it's gonna fall on us to pay for that, or if we'd have done it before, some of it would have gone to Mr. Shuff's, instead of him putting in septic tanks, he could have put in sewer.
Chuck is waxing political right now. Go ahead.
Nonetheless, that's what has been discussed with staff, and that's what's discussed in the report. It seems most beneficial to do that, to take those two specific stations, the Wakulla Middle School, River Plantation Estates, decommission the plant, build a lift station and pump the sewage back.
Brought up that septic sewer on Jane and Jean, we could put a bigger lift station in, David, when they could gravity to it. If we're gonna septic sewer Jean and Jane anyway,
Well, that makes the most sense.
Well, yeah, that's what,
if their line is, if the station's deep enough.
that's right.
Yeah.
We tried to get River Plantation several years ago, but kind of ran into a roadblock there.
Ran the roadblock there.
Far away, too.
Also, the Winco Utilities, I don't know, David, if you want to talk any about that specifically, but there's potential that if that was acquired by the county, there are areas on that north end of the county that could also then be available for septic to sewer that are currently just too far out to service by your current plant. So again, that would just be a discussion that you would need to have.
And I think we will, that's one of them deals that'll come with time. That's a timing issue. The more they get going out at Opportunity Park, I've already had conversations with those guys and.
Does NGO own that plant?
Yeah, and it'll come. It'll happen.
One item that
We
is,
brought some incentives to the table. took some incentives before them, and they're willing to jump on it. It's just they're right now in between and betwixt on a lot of stuff.
Leon County's intent to run sewer down into the Woodville area, so we could potentially,
Potentially, they could come across the state line if we could work out something.
State
County line, yes, county line. I'm sorry.
county lines overlap so much.
just keep expanding, just keep expanding.
That's right.
Sidewalk, Leon County.
It would be cheaper for us just to pay a bulk rate, just like Calcum pays us to tie into our sewer.
One item that is also addressed in the report is in order to meet BMAP requirements, it's anticipated that all three of these facilities would need to undergo upgrades in the very near future. I know that we were provided information from the Winco facility that they are planning on doing upgrades. Was not provided any specific information from Railroad Plantation or the middle school. It doesn't mean that they're not planning upgrades, but it wasn't provided any specific information about those. I do know that in order to meet the BMAP standards, it is likely that upgrades would need to be made because of the way that they're currently reporting, and they would, the way I understand the BMAP is that they would be required to do those during their next permitting cycle.
That's gonna be expensive for River Plantation. I mean, I'm assuming they got a 20 standard now and just a little package plant, right? Extended air plant.
Well, they're gonna be all interested in coming to our system.
Yeah, but it's pretty far away. It's a problem.
See, I can tell you here in just a second.
I think they were only like at 25% capacity, right?
It was very low.
Yeah, the problem there is, you've got to cross Wakulla River.
0.025 MGD, so 25,000 gallons a day.
Is Mysterious Waters on one of the lists for septic sewer?
It is on the list for septic sewer.
Close to them.
And that needs to happen, because there's some issues there.
Yeah, and it's very, as you all know, it's very close to the river.
Yeah, Mysterious Waters is dense, so
It's on the river.
that'd be an easy one.
Well, the park's on sewer.
No, it's not.
It's not State Park? Oh, that park. I thought you meant the subdivision park.
I'll go to State Park, yes.
And so there's gotta be a line going there, reasonably.
It runs,
It runs down the old Wakulla area where old Wakulla area used to be. It's closed now. It runs right through the woods, right down that old route.
I believe it's also a 4-inch line. It's fairly small for what you would need to do.
and part of our plan is if we were able to get that Winco, then the next leap, if we wanted to, would be able to go to St. Mark's and we would either go St. Mark's all the way back here, or bought the system at the Winco, have St. Mark's and the water up there or down there versus, and be able to work those two out.
Sure with Winco, though, they want to reserve capacity for development, too.
Yeah.
So I don't know what their flow is.
So anyway, there's a lot of options there. It's just right now, everything's up in the air. So, a lot of options.
Let me see where we're back at here. The next report that we had, unless you have any other questions about this in
One
particular.
more point to Chuck. Chuck, that line that goes to the park also has the middle school and elementary school tied onto it, so it's probably right at capacity on a 4-inch line.
They actually manifold there at Spring Creek and,
And it runs north to the two schools.
those currently go all the way to Hickory. Part of the proposed upgrades, which a couple slides from now, we talk about doing some reroute, actually utilizing one of the lift stations there at the Palmetto subdivision that was just put in.
Fox Run enforcement that it runs into.
I'll talk a little more, if you're okay, we'll talk a little bit more about that in just a second. Looking right now at the cost comparison of alternative strategies, that was another one of the items that DEP wanted us to dive into. We looked at, basically, there's two viable options that we saw for Wakulla County. The first of which would be to continue the currently funded septic to sewer projects and then identify the rest of the parcels, existing improved parcels within the county to just meet the BMAT requirements based on an enhanced nitrogen reducing septic system as outlined by the BMAP and the Department of Health, as well as the county standards about certain lot sizes using performance-based systems. So we looked at that option. The second option was to do a larger scale septic sewer projects, continue to aggressively pursue those funds, and get more of the county on a central sewer collection system. The upfront costs of those, the option one had a less expensive life cycle cost, whereas the option two was slightly more expensive. However, the benefits were much higher, and the amount of nitrogen that was removed from the environment by doing the option two was significantly greater. So we were recommending continuing to pursue septic to sewer projects for all of the areas that could receive sewer, and those areas that were on the fringes, that there was a lack of density, that those would be recommended to continue with the septic upgrade program that's currently
Let's
on
unpack
the
the
DEP.
statement that says remainder upgraded to enhanced systems per local and state regulations. Does that mean going in and making people retrofit existing septic tanks to performance-based or nitrogen reducing? Or using the incentive program with the drain field, with the wood chips in it?
So, I mean, the goal would be to use the incentive program, right? I don't know, again, with that being state funding, I don't know how long that's going to last, how many tanks are going to be included. I don't want to put anybody on the spot, but Brandy, what was the funding total for this past year through that program?
75 on the septic upgrade system, but that was $577,000 on that one, and we are awaiting an amendment from DEP for another $1 million for that program.
My point is telling people they have to go in and retrofit their existing septic tank, probably just never going to fly.
Well, again, this report followed the BMAP requirements, and the BMAP makes a statement to that effect that again, if I understood.
Sales though, right?
Well, there's a statement in the BMAP that talks about within I believe 20 years of the BMAP being adopted, which happened in 2018, that everything in that area would need to comply with the standards of the BMAP. If I remember not correctly,
If the incentives are there, it may happen.
Yeah, but there's other things we can do to, make it less expensive so that the incentives can take care of the ones that are already here. We need to do something about the ones we're adding as we're going along.
And the ones that are added, any new septic systems that go in are required to meet the BMAP standards or the county standards, which is...
The paradox is that, like Chuck says, is if you're over 2 acres, you can put a regular septic tank in, right, Chuck?
But it still has a...
Tomorrow, but that doesn't jive with the statement that 20 years from now, we want that septic tank that we just approved to be gone.
Well, but
And that's my issue is that, if we're going to do this, let's do it, okay, and require everybody in the priority focus areas to put in these new enhanced systems, because they're just like the existing system. They're not that big, expensive.
The alternate drain field, I agree with you, but if you're, and I don't want to get too deep into the mud in this, but if you're making them do a performance base, they got to have a yearly operating permit. They got to have
Not if they're doing the
passive.
Passive.
I agree, but
okay.
Well,
And
the
so,
said was if you're making them do performance base, they have to have the operating
let's
permit.
do the other, and then that would work.
I tried to get the state to allow us to do the passive one in our area, that we make them do performance-based in, and the state said no, right, Summer?
We pitched that twice, and DEP was not.
For some reason.
not on
And I mean, an immediate no.
the same
It's
standard.
absolutely ludicrous the way it's set up right now. The county has a stronger regulation in a certain area than the state does, and it's just,
Is it because they're not convinced that the passive system is going to prove
I
out?
mean, they allow it in the BMAP, that's not in the,
Are paying for it in the BMAP.
No. They allow it. If you're outside of the Wakulla County special area, our standard is less than 5 acres, right?
anything less than 5 acres in the Wakulla Springs Protection.
Protection zone, which is different than the PFA.
That's correct.
Okay, if you're in the PFA but outside our special zone, you can do
a brand-new system with chips. Or I think they can let them do ATUs without performance-based septic. But if you cross that line, it's crazy.
Well, also in your codes, anything less than .229 acres requires a performance-based system across the whole county. Correct, Summer?
How many, two?
Countywide.
Less than 0.229 acres. So just below a quarter of an acre.
We did that intentionally.
How much is the difference in price of the performance-based versus the regular tank?
Passive, it's about $1,000.
So why would we not just go ahead and say this is what we want done, and we're only talking about $1,000?
That's what
to a system to go ahead and, as a requirement.
It's not that simple.
We don't allow passive systems in our zone. We say it has to be performance-based, right?
Correct.
Now, the difference, it may cost $4,000 or $5,000 more, but like I said, you gotta pay $400 or $500 a year for an operating permit and inspection reports. That's the difference.
It's $200 a year to do it.
But that's the operating
For
permit.
every 6 months expense, for inspection.
And there's additional fees. The performance-based systems, they require, you have pumps that go into it, so there's electricity costs, there's additional maintenance costs. The passive system operates pretty much like a septic, like a regular conventional septic system, except for the treatment happens in the media that's in the drain field.
My wish would be that DEP would allow us to do the passive drain field, which I think we all agree works, and not make people put performance-based in. I think
We can already do that in the PFA 2, which is, because it's outside of our special area.
I tried to get rid of our special district, and
Unless you have
They
less
threw a
than a
hissy
quarter
fit.
of an acre lot size, which they do exist out there in PFA 2, then you still have to do a performance base, because our performance base criteria is countywide for less than a quarter of an acre.
yeah, that was so somebody wouldn't build on a single 5,500 lot with a septic.
It could be in Smith Creek if you got that small a lot.
Jack likes.
Correct.
So,
Lake Ellen is a good example. There's a lot of 50 by 100 foot lots in the area of Lake Ellen, and some of that is, if not all of it, in PFA 2. So if you have one home going in on one of those lots, they would have to put in a performance-based system.
And that was kind
So-
of to encourage less density, basically.
and the BMAP itself, again, if I'm understanding the way that it's worded correctly, anything less than 1 acre within the primary focus areas has to have nitrogen-reducing features as approved by the Department of Health. And the BMAP doesn't distinguish, again, between the in-ground nitrogen-reducing biofilter, which is the media, the drain field, performance-based.
Health department does. If it's in our special zone.
The BMAP does not, but you have a regulation.
But we still have a large part of the county that's not in that special zone, and we could help with our problem in the future by making that performance.
This goes back to that argument, but
If we can convince DEP.
friendly discussion,
No, they won't let us change the one to the special area, but they would allow us to do it in the PFA 2, because it would match the BMAP.
but again, our past discussions, not to bring up the past, but this is what DEP came up with.
That was for our special protection area, okay? If we don't go into the special protection area, we just deal with PFA 2, we can require the passive system.
Yeah, but again, this is what DEP came up with. They said to restore the springs. And we talked about this. We can make it stronger. Yes, we can make it
We can
stronger.
make it stronger, and basically, we've got 6,000 septic tanks we've got to get off the system, okay? And so how are we going to do that? Especially since we're putting them on faster than we're taking them off.
My preference would be to keep the incentive program going. And I know a lot of people,
Well, the incentive program, that's for existing ones. I'm only talking about new construction. You know, those houses we're putting out in PFA 2, we need to get those on the passive system, because it enhances our springs, and it's not that much more expensive.
And I think this is what we talked about when we were talking about the Winco Road with the 2 acres before, about, who was that, Robbie Miller's, that's what we were talking about, but DEP said that we could not do that, correct? Because that was,
we could have done whatever we
We
wanted.
can't change our regulatory standards regarding performance-based to be in line with the BMAP criteria, because our policies right now are more restrictive than theirs. So we're getting credit under the BMAP for having more restrictive requirements than what the state is requiring. So that's why they don't want us changing that. But in a situation like the Ray Winkle Road property that was recently rezoned, that allows for 2-acre tracts, is the comp plan's land use for density allows 1 home per 2 acres, which without sewer connection.
Let me throw this
So
out
that
there.
density is in place regardless of whether you have sewer or not. And there's not currently sewer available, nor do we have a density allowance that contemplates you can get higher density here if you go ahead and bring sewer to the site. So one thing that you could do to maybe eliminate Commissioner Hess's concern is provide some amendments to your land use designation that provides those incentives to spend the money to bring sewer to this project in exchange for higher density.
Let me offer
But you're
this.
going to have to amend the comp plan to do
Well,
that.
you think DEP would be allowed to do like a trade-off if they would accept, because my big hang-up is requiring performance-based systems. I don't necessarily have a problem with the passive, okay? If we could take the requirement for the performance-based off, but then expand what Chuck's talking about out to say if you're less than 5 acres, say, that you gotta have a nitrogen reducing system, or even 10, whatever.
Less than 10 acres.
Make a trade-off, if you let us get rid of the performance-based system, which I think is onerous because you got operating permits and everything, we're gonna, the nitrogen offset, we're taking off by performance-based, we're gonna offset with requiring passive systems on other tracts of land. Do you understand what I'm saying?
I think, the passive system, it seems to me to be, it reduces the nitrogen, and it doesn't have all the maintenance that...
I'm with you, brother. I'm with you.
But we can always run it, Dave might turn around giving daggers, but I mean, we can always run it up the flagpole again with DEP and propose some, other options to see
It would be an even trade-off as far as nitrogen reducing.
the potential.
Chuck said, I don't necessarily have grief either with what you're saying,
Tell
Chuck.
us no again and.
I just don't want to do both.
Back with our tail between our legs for a third time.
So, Summer, you said they're giving us credits. Is the concern that if we lose those credits, it's going to expand the requirements, like instead of 1 acre, it may go to 5 acres for the rest of the BMAP?
Usually, because they have some fancy formula on a bazillion column long spreadsheet where they're giving each community credit for the various projects. And we have, what was it, Trevor, on this latest update, we have about 30 or 40 projects already in the BMAP that they're crediting us for nitrate reduction initiatives. And each year we update that to add more, so.
What I'm saying is maybe they'll offset that credit they're currently giving us if we give them a different credit for saying you gotta have a passive nitrogen reducing system on a larger lot, which doesn't add that much expense, and I think that meets your end goal.
My end goal is just to reduce the nitrogen. That would, and if we keep, right now, in the PFA 2, somebody can go out and put in a standard septic tank, close on their house, next day go apply for money to get it replaced, okay? And that just doesn't make any sense.
Here's another thing I don't think DEP realizes too, a lot of people have these performance-based systems, all they can do is go turn the pump off. Say, I don't want to smell it, I don't want my power bill, I'll just shut it off. Then it totally does nothing. It's just a regular septic tank.
It's not even a good septic tank.
No, so maybe DEP be open to that. A passive system, you can't shut it off, it's always on.
Well, the state's done studies on that as well. There's a couple of documented studies about the,
Four wires.
They were doing a big study.
It's easy to change out.
this was actually, I think the state study, I referenced it was like in 2008.
Hey, Rockets.
Um,
Happy to meet with them too. I got nothing to lose, I ain't running again, I ain't
I mean, it seems reasonable. If that's what they're requiring this replacement, then it seems like it would be good
Yeah,
countywide.
they're paying for it right now, so it seems,
But, like you said, let's say, for example, Robbie Miller's stuff, we had a rule and we changed our ordinance and saying, if you're on less than 5 acres, you have to do some sort of nitrogen reduction. He would have done the passive, right? But in exchange for that, take away this crazy requirement for these performance-based systems. That's what I'm saying. Because they're not, to me, they're not, in aggregate, if you consider the ones that are probably turned off versus the ones that are working, they're probably not as effective as the passive systems.
If you went out and measured, you're probably right.
The state did, the study that you asked, 2008, they did a study on performance-based systems. The name of the study is a report on range of costs to implement a mandatory statewide 5-year septic tank inspection program. It's available on the Department of Health's website. And they found that an average of 9.5% that was their failure rate. So they did another study, and I think of those, about 30% were in failure. However, they attributed that to some of them being summer homes, and they weren't consistently lived in, power had been shut off to the house or something like that.
I mean, the ones, the performance-based where the electrical system is in it. The passive system runs all the time. You do have to keep it moist, but that's not too hard in Florida.
I can go back and I can verify.
I need to check on what's the current status of the passive systems, the in-ground nitrogen reduction biofilters, okay, and how well they're working, because if they're working as well as the aerations,
They're still performing studies on those. There's a lot of pilot programs that are going on with different, from what I understand. So there's still data being gathered in that particular.
And it may be time to go back to DEP, because at the time we went to them, remember, they were just rolling all this out, and they were wanting to give it a little bit of time to let it breathe a little bit. And yeah, now maybe the time, as well as leadership has changed, and et cetera.
It may have a number that's, shows us that it's just as effective to use these in-ground systems as the aeration system.
Right.
And I would support Chuck taking to a larger lot size in that PFA area too.
Yeah.
If we could just get rid of performance
We've
based.
got to get rid of the standard septic tanks inside the priority focus area.
If it matters at all for the purpose of calculation, in what I was given guidance on by the folks that wrote the BMAP, is there's no distinction made in their general calculations between the type of enhanced nitrogen reducing system. Between that and a conventional septic system, they assume 65% nitrogen reduction, and that's not a, I guess, split between performance-based, ATU, INRB. That's the number that they give for any enhanced nitrogen-reducing system, which is, I understand that's aggregated, and there probably parts of this play in with areas that are required to do performance-based systems or vice versa. But anyways, it's just maybe something to ponder on as well.
Did you just say that the nitrogen reducing system, they don't calculate any further reduction compared to the traditional?
No, they calculate it at a flat rate of 65% over the traditional.
Okay.
So the nitrogen, they don't, there's not a they don't distinguish in the BMAP document itself between the three common types of nitrogen reducing.
And the passive.
If it's a nitrogen reducing system and it's enhanced from a conventional, they assume 65% reduction in nitrogen.
Better than the other, they basically get the same.
That's, yeah, and again, I'm sure there's a way that number was aggregated to be able to provide a quick and easy calculation to assume nitrogen reduction over a large area. But anyways, that's the guidance I was given. That's actually the guidance in the report that I used to calculate the nitrogen reduction for the cost benefits on these projects was 65% reduction from a conventional system to enhanced nitrogen reducing system.
NSF certifies these performance based, and their percentage is clearly documented.
And depending on which technology you use, it's across the board. There's different brands have different values, and even at that. And also in your regulation as well, I think
Milligrams per liter, which is
it's 10 milligrams. It's 10 milligrams per liter. That's right, and that's in.
percent removal, not 10 milligrams per liter. But anyway, we can't change that either.
Well, that's in your documentation. So. Bringing it back around to this specifically, when we're talking about the two options, option number one, everything that's not in the orange column on the spreadsheet there on the side of the table. The orange are projects that are planned and not currently funded. Everything else has either been completed, funded, it's in progress, one of those options. So option 1 would be not including any of the ones that are in the orange spreadsheet, and the option 2 has all the rest of those. So you can see quite a few additional septic tank removals to convert to sewer. And also, I'll just make a note, north is to the left on this map. We had that out actually at one of the community events and had to swap the map over, but it just didn't fit right on the page, so I had to leave it turned this way. So those are the areas that we've identified for septic conversion. Based on density, based on approximate location to existing sewer, a few different criteria. So that's the areas that we believe will be converted that will be pursued for funding over the course of the next several years.
Did you ever do the calculations by house? How many we're going to achieve by the number?
Can you repeat that or rephrase that?
Well, what meadow acres that you're going to spend $1 million and get 17 homes?
Mm-hmm.
Do you ever look at the price per house, the cost benefit, the cost benefit there?
I mean, we've looked at that. We've looked at that in the past. I don't have the numbers right here for you. Some of those are simple as dividing that number, the total cost, by the amount of homes, because there's not additional lots. The ones that are in Magnolia and Wakulla Gardens actually have a pretty good benefit to those, because the state doesn't necessarily calculate it when you look at BMAP as far as reductions, because it's not a home that you're taking a connection from, but you are providing sewer for any future connection that wouldn't have been there before. If a home, say prior to the Phase 1 project in Magnolia Gardens, if a home built, they would have used, more than likely per your standards, they would have used a performance-based system, because a lot of the lots there are less than 0.229 acres. But now they would go directly to the sewer system, so they would have enhanced reduction of nitrogen. So to answer your question, no, there's not a specific number on those, but it could be calculated and provided. Is it? Okay. Finally, summary of the proposed upgrades. As we've discussed, there's a lot of projects that are needing to go in to be able to meet the BMAP requirements. Of those, we're going to have to do a lot of collection transmission system upgrades to the wastewater plant itself, your effluent discharge system, as we've talked at several past commission meetings, upgrades at the golf course to be able to handle the additional flows that we're proposing to put that direction. Anyways, this next map here, if you remember, I said I was going to skip it, come back to it. Here it is. We're looking at 16 and 20-inch force main coming out of the Station 76, which is the one near the intersection of Spring Creek and Highway 98. That would be a 16-inch line up to about the point where Ray Winkle Road intersects 98. It would then be upsized to approximately a 20-inch line, going down 98, coming up 319 where the intersection is at the high school, and then going through a new route through the forest along Floyd Gray Road, Friendship Church Road, Lyon Mill Road, back to the wastewater plant, so that we can avoid utility conflicts that are it's very heavy utilities coming through the existing Sopchoppy Highway corridor. That would then allow us to convert the existing force main into what we were talking about earlier, reuse main, to be able to serve back towards the golf course, to enhance the flow that will be able to go there, and also to provide a stub out for any future connections along the 98 corridor. Yes, sir, Commissioner. Yes.
The 16-inch force main starting at the lift station 76.
Yes, sir.
Where is that material coming from? The
Wakulla Gardens area.
Coming down?
It's coming down Spring Creek Highway and it has to be upsized, one, for the amount of flow that's coming, and two, for the distance that it has to pump. due to the friction loss in the pipe. But you're also collecting shell point.
I'm
And-
looking at, there's nothing leading to that.
Yeah, it's deceptive. It looks like it's out in the middle of nowhere, but, when you're talking about connecting all of Wakulla Gardens, the park subdivision there that's adjacent to it, and then if there are any other future improvements or developments on that Spring Creek Highway corridor or eastward of there that wanted to tie to your system, that would be its connection point.
Dewberry's turning all that force main in on Friday for permitting all the way to the plant.
Now, is this map going up Ray Winco, assuming that D.R. Horton's gonna
By
develop
Friday.
that 800 acres?
No good?
Is the force main size going up Ray Winco, assuming that D.R. Horton property's gonna be developed at max density?
No, not max density. No, we throttled it back. It assumes there will be something developed there, yes.
But
2,000 units.
Is the 16 that's counting for all 4 phases for the sewer, for the Wakulla Gardens? Once we get all the phases done, gets everything switched over to the sewer, the 16-inch pipe's still gonna be big enough for a force main?
Yes, we've looked at a 20-year planning period, and so we've taken into account those. Again, there's some adjustments that may have to be taken into the design. It's got to go through permitting at this point. So there could be some comments come back with an adjustment in line size. I don't anticipate that it'll be smaller than 16, but it appears right now that the calculations work out for that.
And if I'm not mistaken, we're putting, I can't remember, it's been a while, we got a 20 going through,
Forest?
through the forest.
That's correct.
Yeah.
And eventually, a 16-inch would need to come from, you're familiar with the Hickory Park lift station. It's at Hickory Park. That's where most of the, just about all of the wastewater that's generated north and east of that point in the county goes to Hickory Park. In order to be able to expand the capacity there, we would want to expand the capacity of the line itself. Currently, it's got I believe, an 8-inch line that ties to a 12-inch line, and then it goes all the way to the plant. On it, we'd be talking about doing a 16-inch line all the way up to the point where it would intersect this new 20.
And what we're gonna do there is, as soon as we lay the 20, we tie the 20 in, the 12 into the 20, that'll take some of the head off of it.
Some of it, yeah.
But also, there's right here at Lost Creek, you'll be seeing that, I think you gave me something on that? Okay, we gotta make a revision, you'll be seeing something on that, maybe here soon about, we're gonna take right now the force main goes under the creek, Lost Creek, we wanna hang it on the bridge, if the bridge can handle it, we wanna put it on the bridge, because we have a lot of loss in there as well, that's the bottom, and it collects a lot of trash in there, it plugs the line, so.
It's about 20 foot of head pressure, 15.
You lose a significant amount, also due to the fact that grit accumulates in the bottom on that bore. I know that we've discussed with operations staff that they go out, I would say fairly routinely, and put a large bypass pump on the line just to be able to scour all of that debris. Your current pumps don't have enough to push it through, and so then it's
Quite a bit of debris.
creating
So we want to eliminate that, and that'll help Hickory Park, as well as soon as we get this other stuff done, other force mains in, we're going to take off what we talked about. We're going to separate a lot of sewer and take it off Hickory Park. Then Hickory Park will free up.
And so the other,
Possible to pig that line out? Do we have somewhere we could get it out?
They're constantly blowing it out.
yeah.
He's actually run a pig through there that goes,
We looked at having an ice pick done. Nobody had availability at the time, but because there's no alternative in that last line all the time, that
Yeah.
cuts down what we
gotcha.
Here to put a pig in there.
So one other item that we've evaluated is putting a new lift station on Alexander Road. Actually, the county already owns the parcel that direction, and that would allow reroutes to happen through the central Crawfordville area. Several of this, what you had discussed earlier, the Fox Run, Shadeville Elementary, all of those, they would collect at the Palmetto lift station. That lift station was already designed to be able to handle some reroutes. It would then pump to Alexander lift station, which would then pump to that new 20-inch force main and out to the plant. So again, that would take a lot of the capacity, it would free up capacity at the Hickory lift station.
Just a fun fact, I actually permitted that Fox Run line back when I was an engineer. Fun fact.
It's still holding up.
I thought we was gonna run force main down Winco Road.
That's part of it. That is part of that. That's the 16-inch that's shown there.
All right. So when you're doing Magnolia Gardens,
Yes, sir.
Magnolia Gardens, you have a huge number of parcels out there.
Yes, sir.
This force main's gonna be able to handle all that when it's built out.
That's what we've discussed is looking at that in the calculations.
And plus, we need to get Shell Point and Live Oak Island on the same line.
So those don't belong to the county. Those are,
It's one of the things we need to do in the future, so
Have capacity for it at least.
we need to make sure that we have capacity, because it's gonna have to go through that lift station.
well,
Be in your calculations in the future.
currently everything from Shell Point that is on sewer comes to the lift station. So whatever else.
Calculation, 18-inch pipe at 3 feet per second, how many gallons per day is that? I bet it's like 3 million. It's a lot of sewer. 6-inch line.
There's 3,000 houses out there, it's 150 gallons a
Let's
day.
just assume a low velocity of 3 feet per second.
Yeah, they can handle that. Yeah, handle more.
Run more like 4 or 5 million gallons a day.
I'm just asking.
I'm just trying to defend our engineering friends over here.
The calculations will be provided with the permit, and if you're curious on any of the questions, if you're curious on any of the items, just ask us and we can walk through the calculations specifically. Be glad.
Very simple calculation.
Any other questions or fun part, funding? So you've already been very successful with most of these on the top of the list, the DEP Wastewater Grants. That's some of that funding that just got released or it's being released currently, I guess, for a lot of the septic to sewer projects. Obviously, the Springs grants, this was funded about 18 million or so to date through Springs. That would be everything through Magnolia Gardens phases 1, 2, and 3, and also Wakulla Gardens phases 1, 2, 3, and I believe 4 were funded through the Springs pot. Restore Act has funded the Lift Station 76 upgrades. USDA Rural Development, you use that to upgrade your wastewater plant, and I believe you used it for some other items around, other RD grants for other items around the county. The CDBG, Community Development Block Grant, not one that has been, to my knowledge, recently used for sewer. I believe that that's what sewered the area that's around the Hickory Park lift station, and I believe either upgraded the Hickory Park lift station or built the Hickory Park lift station. One of the two was a CDBG project. But again, that could be a good source of funding. There's a lot of income eligibility requirements that go along with that. So if there are some particular areas as future expansion takes place that looks like it would meet, that could be a very good source of funding. You use state revolving fund that paid for the design on the Alexander force main and the force main that goes through the forest, that reroute. The American Rescue Plan Act has been discussed for a couple of options with sewer. And then the DEP septic upgrades and connection, the grant program, that's what Brandy had discussed just a minute ago, that you got $500,000 and we're looking at another $1 million in an amendment to that agreement. That's to be able to connect or to upgrade individual septic systems that are conventional to a performance or not performance, let me correct myself, enhanced nitrogen reducing system, or if the home is adjacent to sewer, to be able to connect them to the sewer system. And then also your local sewer revenues, the access fees that you collect are used for system upgrades. Those can be leveraged against most of these funds here to be able to provide a higher level of service, along with, you've used 1 cent sales tax in the past, not for the sewer itself, but for paving or stormwater improvements that are ancillary to the project that's going in. So anyways, those are some potential funding sources, those that you have been successful with in the past and those that we would anticipate being utilized in the future to continue these projects. With that said, are there any other questions or any?
What, with 34 million gallons a day?
I can't look like 3.7 million gallons.
You're off by a factor of 10 then.
One question I had, earlier when you were talking about the smoke, where you said you had problems, and I know you had some of the areas on there, have all those already been taken care of and fixed?
I know that many have been taken care of, but I'm not sure if every single one of them has been taken care of. I can find that information out and confirm that with you.
Well, I mean, I think if we got issues like that, I mean, it is something that we need to address and get fixed.
Okay. I'll look into that and let you know.
How big's our infiltration problem?
All according to where it rains.
Biggest at the coast and the ditches.
Well, it was, we've got it, it's better in Panacea now. The biggest problem we have is up here at Hickory Park.
Yeah, there's been some substantial flows that come into Hickory.
And we're trying to find out where it is.
Is he still spike at the plant, on the flows?
Only during significant rain events.
And you suspect it's coming from Crawfordville?
We know it is. 'Cause
Yeah.
Hickory will be pumping at full capacity and still overflowing.
But it could be, anywhere it could be feeding to it. Have you checked all the outside lifts there? You think it's the gravity system in Hickory Park?
That was our first suspect, but we can't find out for us. We checked the crab house and checked the manhole back in the park.
But it could be what called Springs for all we know, right? I mean, it pops into that, directly into that station.
Correct.
We haven't isolated which.
Run times aren't telling us on the pumps.
You're gonna have to go around to each individual lift station till you find out which one is.
Well, we're looking at the run times. They're all looking at, that's the reason we eliminated Panacea and eliminate it down to.
There's one reason that the central Crawfordville area was focused when we were doing on the gravity, or the smoke testing on the gravity system. But again, those were, the issue, the defects were minimal, and don't appear to contribute to the.
And one of the things we did last year, and we're going to do this year as well, we started a lining program, a manhole lining program in Panacea. We're going to continue that, and that has helped our I&I tremendously down there. And we'll continue that and do 10 more this year.
Is that with the spraying of the manholes? Yeah, okay.
That helped tremendously for Panacea. But there's a problem up here at Hickory Park. I just don't know where it is. Wish we did.
Be great. Are there any other questions or concerns? If not,
All right. Anybody have any other questions or motion to adjourn?
Make the changeover, it's time to go.
Let's go over our map, right? See who's right.
So we will adjourn and start the BOCC meeting at 5 p.m.
7.4 acres.
Thank you very much.
Behind me had a